Hi, my name is Nikki Harris. As a candidate for the Doctor of Athletic Training degree at A.T. Still University, I present to you my applied research project entitled Developing Cognitive Skills Through Active Learning, a Systematic Review of Health Professions, completed with advisement from Dr. Welch Bacon. Throughout the course of your athletic training career, you have most likely served as an educator. Some of us have formerly served as educators, whether as a faculty member, professor, adjunct professor, teacher, or even clinical preceptor. Or perhaps you have served in a more informal fashion as a supervisor or mentor to those working in your respective setting. Regardless of your role, it has been easy to notice that students of the millennial generation differ immensely from their predecessors. Unlike students before them, millennials have been thought to have unrealistic expectations, entitlement issues, a lack of critical thinking and oral communication skills, as well as I tell my students regularly, a spoon-fed guide on how to succeed, both at new experiences or challenges in the classroom and clinical setting. It is with this information I ask, how do we get through to these students? Whether we like it or not, we must adapt our teaching styles to reach these students and ensure they are obtaining the skills necessary to succeed in clinical practice. Acknowledging this new type of student, universities have placed high priority on producing students with transferable skills, skills which are valued by employers, particularly of the healthcare industry. These skills include intangibles such as confidence and motivation, people skills such as teamwork and communication, as well as analytical skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making. These processes require a higher level of learning as well as a higher level of cognitive skill. For many years, healthcare education has been teacher-centered. Knowledge has been imparted on students through basic information transfer. In other words, students passively receive the information, usually through lecture, and then memorize it before being assessed on the content. While traditional learning has long been effective for enhancing lower-order cognitive tasks of remembering, understanding, and applying information, some have proposed that it is not capable of encouraging students' ability to think on the higher end of the cognitive spectrum and achieve analytical, evaluative, and creative skills. In a healthcare profession, it is these higher order cognitive skills which are needed to transfer learned information into practicing clinicians via the STEEP principles. Thankfully, it has recently been argued that students need a more active process of acquiring knowledge. Instruction through active learning is thought to boost students' chances of paying attention and actively participating in authentic and meaningful learning. Active learning has been used to describe a variety of techniques, including but not limited to problem-based, case-based, and game-based learning, as well as flipping the classroom. Regardless of the technique used, each technique centers around the independence of the student, the coaching role of the professor, and the provision of knowledge as a tool and not a final aim. The goal of active learning is to foster deep learning and understanding of course content. Strong evidence supports active learning techniques in business, IT, and STEM disciplines. However, less evidence exists on the application of these pedagogies to healthcare education. Moreover, existing literature in healthcare is dominated by studies revealing positive satisfaction with the active learning experience. Aside from this literature, there is a gap in studies available to support active learning models for stimulating lower order cognitive processes. Likewise, and even more uncommon, are studies which determine whether active learning is successful at stimulating higher order cognitive processes. With that being said, this systematic review aims to address the following research questions. Is active learning more successful at increasing lower order cognition in healthcare profession students, as described by recall, understanding, and application of knowledge? Second, is active learning more effective at improving higher order cognition, as described by analyzing, evaluating, and creating skills in students of healthcare profession disciplines? In order to answer these questions, we performed a systematic review of literature. This included an electronic search of the A.T. Still Memorial Library in 4 different databases: CINAHL, Sport Discus, Educational Resources Information Center, or ERIC, and PubMed. Boolean terms and phrases included millennial and health education, active learning and knowledge retention, flipped classroom and learning outcomes, problem-based learning and learning outcomes, problem-based learning and student confidence, active learning and critical thinking, and finally, higher order thinking and active learning. Peer-reviewed articles were included in this review if they were published in English between 2007 and present, and investigated the effectiveness of any active instructional technique on learning in students of any healthcare profession discipline. Editorials, commentaries, abstracts, and studies of non-scientific or non-healthcare related educational disciplines were excluded. Additionally, research studies that did not address the primary questions of interest were omitted. The study design, learning technique, learning outcomes, assessment measures, population, results, and conclusions were all extracted from each article. Extracted data was entered into a standardized spreadsheet according to its ability to answer one or both of the research questions of interest. Data was extracted from a total of 154 articles, 85 of which addressed lower order thinking and 69 of which focused on higher order cognitive skills. For the purposes of this review, lower order cognition was defined by the lower 3 tiers of Bloom's revised taxonomy. This includes learning skills and outcomes related to memory, understanding, and application of course content or information. In regard to lower order cognition, 72% of studies reviewed indicated that active learning resulted in superior knowledge gains as compared to traditional instructional techniques. For example, a systematic review and meta-analysis of 5 studies by Galvo et al. Concluded that pharmacy students participating in problem-based learning had higher midterm and final exam scores compared to those partaking in traditional instruction. Similarly, Tavernier and Hertzler found that while participants in both traditional and clicker groups showed statistically significant increases in knowledge, athletic training students in the clicker group demonstrated higher knowledge acquisition as compared to students in the control group. Furthermore, Giuseppe found that the flipped classroom method was successful at increasing medical students' scores on both multiple choice exams as well as objective, structured clinical examinations as compared to students in the traditional classroom environment. Over and above the 72% of studies supporting active learning, an additional 25% of studies deemed active learning to produce similar results as traditional learning. For example, Blakely et al. Performed a systematic review of 16 health sciences studies, which concluded that while both traditional didactic methods and active learning showed triumph in students' knowledge, neither technique could be deemed more helpful to students than the other. Likewise, Harrington and colleagues found similar results. Authors revealed no statistically significant differences in quiz, exam, or course grades between nursing students learning through traditional and flipped classroom methods. Furthermore, only 3 of 85 studies, or 4%, found traditional instruction to be more effective than active instruction at improving lower order cognition. One study by Mahler found poor effects for active learning on improving knowledge of medical students. When the use of self-directed learning was compared to both lecture and traditional workshop formats for medical students, authors found that individual test scores from self-directed learning students were significantly lower than both traditional lecture students and those learning in a workshop format. Additionally, Murray et al. Found that the flipped classroom did not significantly improve doctor of physical therapy student performance on knowledge, comprehension, or application aspects of lower level cognition. While support for active learning was not gathered here, it should be noted that authors suggested that a student's prior academic performance may have a significantly larger impact on knowledge retention in all performance areas rather than the teaching pedagogy used in the didactic setting. For the purposes of this review, higher order cognition was defined by the top 3 layers of Bloom's revised taxonomy: analyzing, evaluating, and creating. These higher order cognitive tasks underlie the skills such as critical thinking and problem solving necessary for employability and successful transition to clinical practice. Of the 69 studies addressing higher order thinking, 84% reported active learning to be more successful than traditional learning. A systematic review by Nikoski confirmed that problem-based learning boosted self-esteem, confidence, scholarship, and the analysis component of critical thinking in nursing students. Furthermore, Moying and colleagues reported similar results in medical students, finding that the use of problem-based learning correlated to improvements in problem solving, critical thinking, and decision making. Moreover, Baker et al. Performed a study using the learning skills profile to determine the effects of a problem-based learning curriculum on job-related skills. Problem-based learning was responsible for producing increases in all 12 elements of the LSP. Problem-based learning also resulted in more success as compared to traditional learning on 8 personal learning skills. These included leadership, help, sense-making, information gathering, theory, quantitative, action, and initiative. Additionally, they showed significant improvements in 6 job-related skills: help, sense-making, information gathering, information analysis, theory, and technology. An additional 13% of studies addressing higher order cognition deemed similar effects as compared to traditional learning. For example, a review of 13 studies by Kowalczyk aimed to identify teaching methods that demonstrated positive effects on radiology students' critical thinking skills. However, only 6 of these 13 studies were able to demonstrate significant differences in critical thinking scores. Overall, the author was unable to support the use of active learning over traditional learning for enhancing radiology students' critical thinking skills. Furthermore, Murray and colleagues found that the flipped classroom method did not significantly improve physical therapy students' performance on higher order cognition question exams as compared to traditional face-to-face methods. Furthermore, Permedian measured critical thinking in dental students using the health science reasoning test to find that students showed no significant continuous or incremental improvement in their overall critical thinking scores during the course of their PBL dental education. In this study, we aim to systematically review the available literature for quantifiable evidence in support of active learning techniques over traditional learning techniques for the production of lower order and higher order cognitive skills. Despite the immense variety of active learning techniques, the most common strategies used in healthcare profession education included problem-based, team-based, case-based, game-based learning, as well as flipping the classroom. Pharmaceutical, nursing, and medical disciplines have been the champions of research on active learning, but less research has been available in rehabilitation sciences such as athletic training, physical and occupational therapy, as well as other allied health fields. Regardless of the technique used, student-centered instruction has shown success in developing lower-order cognition to degrees equal to or more commonly greater than traditional instruction. Improvements in healthcare profession students' lower-order cognition has yielded measurable benefits to student success, such as higher exam scores, lower failure rates, and better practical exam performance. They have also shown overall improvements in course grades. It is conceivable that higher course grades, along with lower course failure rates, will improve student retention and graduation rates, as well as improve performance and pass rates on medical licensure exams. Beyond the success of the student, the active learning experience should be considered a potential avenue to meet future educational program, college, and university strategic goals. Beyond lower order cognition, active learning has also proposed to cultivate the higher order thinking skills, which are fundamental for effective clinical practice in the 21st century. Mastery of these skills is required for developing complex cognitive abilities such as critical thinking, problem solving, clinical reasoning, and decision making. Furthermore, participation in active in the active learning experience encourages students to develop strong work values such as confidence, self-efficacy, teamwork, and communication. Based on this evidence, it is plausible to assume that equipping future healthcare providers with higher order cognitive skills will better prepare them not only to provide healthcare via the STEEP technique, but also to embrace the increasingly complex healthcare system. Future research also necessitates studies using newly certified graduates and employers to determine whether participation in the active learning experience contributes to improved outcomes related to transition to clinical practice and the healthcare workforce. Collection of this evidence may inspire educators of healthcare professions to review their current instructional strategies. Additionally, it may assist in determining appropriate strategies for implementing learner-centered instruction and incorporating active learning into course materials and the didactic learning environment. While the studies included in this review varied in terms of design, the larger concern is that studies varied vastly in the learning outcome of interest, the operational definitions for the learning outcomes of interest, as well as the method of outcome assessment. Due to that fact, a meta-analysis was not possible at this time. Furthermore, we did have some initial trouble locating a standardized method of assessing quality for these studies as they were non-clinical and educationally related. In conclusion, we support the use of active learning methods for enhancing both lower order and higher order cognitive skills in healthcare profession students. Active learning may provide greater benefits when compared to traditional learning, but at worst, it will lead to equal learning with improved student satisfaction. Despite the evidence supporting active learning, the need for higher quality and well-designed prospective studies are needed to evaluate the influence of the learning experience on newly certified healthcare professionals, their transition to practice, and ultimately their performance in the workforce. Until that research is conducted, healthcare educators should approach instructional design with the needs of the student and the demand of the workforce at the center of priority. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation on my applied research project. I hope that you find this information valuable. In the future, you can contact me by either of the following email addresses.